Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're setting out on a seriously fascinating journey to a tiny pine-covered ridge way up in the Himalayas. It's a place that has inexplicably attracted the most bizarrely diverse list of global icons you could ever imagine. We're talking everyone from 19th century wandering monks to literal rock star legends. We are going to explore the incredible history, the vibrant counterculture, and yes, the actual real-world physics behind the legendary Kasar Devi. Now, if you've heard of Kasar Devi today, there's a really good chance you've heard this very specific, incredibly popular modern myth. The story goes that this ridge is endowed with some massive geomagnetic cosmic energy. People claim there's a literal gap in the Van Allen radiation belt right above it, which supposedly links it to other highly energetic hotspots around the globe, like Stonehenge in the UK and Machu Picchu in Peru. But, is there actually any truth to this? Well, we're going to look at exactly what the science says. Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand the magic of this place, you first have to picture the landscape. This is the totally serene, elevated setting of the Kashahai Hills in Uttarakhand, India. Way before the cosmic myths and well before the rock stars showed up, there was simply this, a quiet, majestic environment, covered in deodar and pine trees, looking out over the Halabag Valley with those massive, snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas just standing silently in the distance. Geographically speaking, Kasar Devi is in the Kumaon region, just about 8 kilometers north of the town of Almora. It sits beautifully perched right on the edge of a ridge. It's accessible, sure, but it's also just remote enough to feel entirely removed from all the hustle and bustle of the world below. Section 1. The Spiritual Pioneers, a hub long before the hippies. You see, long before anyone ever uttered the words hippie trail or Van Allen belt, this specific ridge was already operating as a profound magnet for spiritual seekers. The story really kicks off back in August of 1890, when the renowned spiritual leader Swami Vivekananda actually came to this very ridge during his wandering years. He meditated right here under a peepal tree. And according to his own records, it was during this exact meditation at Kasar Devi that he experienced a profound revelation. He realized the ultimate oneness of the macrocosm, the entire universe, with the microcosm, the individual soul. But Vivekananda's time there wasn't just about lofty cosmic realizations. It was actually intensely human. There's this incredible story where, near Almora, opposite a cemetery, a starving and completely exhausted Vivekananda just collapsed on a flat rock. And he was saved by a Muslim fakir named Zulfikar Ali, who offered the weakened monk a cucumber and some water. When the fakir hesitated to hand-feed him, Vivekananda just smiled and said, "Are we not all brothers?" It's such a vivid mini-narrative that perfectly captures the profound human connection this whole region fostered. Let's move on and see how this builds, because over the following decades, there is an absolute chronological whiplash of global icons flocking here. You go from Vivekananda in 1890 straight to the Danish mystic Alfred Sorensen visiting the Narrow family in 1934. Then, the amazing dance maestro Uday Shankar arrives in 1938, followed decades later by the beat poet Allen Ginsberg in 1962. It's just an unbelievable procession of brilliant minds for one tiny Himalayan ridge. So by the 1930s, the area had blossomed into a full-blown cultural renaissance. It became this incredible melting pot for Tibetan Buddhists and Western scholars. I mean, you had Walter Evans Wentz, the guy who translated the Tibetan Book of the Dead, staying there. You had Lama Anagarika Govinda establishing an ashram. Political heavyweights like Jawaharlal Nehru were taking vacations nearby at the Kali estate. And artistically, Uday Shankar set up a cultural center at nearby Simtola, where he practically invented a brand new dance form by mixing Indian classical dance right along with the local Kumani Ramlila ballet. Section 2. Hub of the Hippie Trail, Cranks Ridge in the 1960s. And then the 1960s hit. This quiet spiritual retreat just exploded into a global counterculture hotspot, earning some pretty colorful nicknames like Hippie Hill and Cranks Ridge. The Beat Generation writers and bohemian artists of the West basically saw this ridge as the ultimate spiritual haven. As the American poet Allen Ginsberg so eloquently put it in a letter, Rishikesh and Almora were not unlike the Catskills, readily accessible, only more spiritual. It was simply the place to escape, to think, and to create. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer density of pop culture legends that converged on this tiny spot. You had the psychologist Timothy Leary, who notoriously streaked naked on the ridge and actually wrote a psychedelic version of the Tao Te Ching right there. Musical titans, we're talking Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Cat Stevens, they all made pilgrimages to the ridge. Even the prominent Buddhist scholar Robert Thurman spent months studying there, and he brought along his then 3-year-old daughter, who you might know as the future Hollywood star Uma Thurman.
Section 3. Debunking the magnetic myth, physics versus folklore.
So, what does this all mean? Why did so many people actually come? Well, aside from the stunning views and the free-flowing local hemp, the 1960s really cemented that myth we mentioned earlier. The whole idea that Maa Kasar Devi sat right under a gap in the Van Allen radiation belt, magically granting it massive magnetic power. But when we break down the data from a detailed physics analysis, we see a huge disconnect between the lore and the reality. The claim states that a gap in the belt creates an enormous geomagnetic field on the ground, letting in cosmic energy. But the reality of astrophysics is literally the exact opposite. First off, the Earth's atmosphere is a highly effective shield against this radiation. We don't even feel the Van Allen belts on the surface. And second, a strong magnetic field actually keeps radiation out. It definitely doesn't let it in. Let's look at the actual hard numbers for a second. The median magnetic field strength on Earth is around 44,500 nanotesla. Now, at Kasar Devi, the field strength measures between 48,000 and 49,000 nanotesla. That is a totally respectable number for sure, but it is completely unremarkable. It's just slightly above the global average. So the crucial point here is that the entire geographic myth is perfectly backwards. The magnetic field at Kasar Devi is no different than what you'd find walking around the US, Canada, or Russia. Stonehenge shares this exact same totally ordinary magnetic band. And Machu Picchu, which the myth claims is identically highly magnetic, it actually sits near the South Atlantic anomaly, meaning it has a remarkably low magnetic field, not a high one. It's just a fascinating example of how a simple misunderstanding of astrophysics birthed a full-blown modern spiritual legend.
Section 4. The Ancient Sun Temple, a true architectural marvel.
But here's the thing, we really don't need cosmic myths to find wonder in this region. Just 21 kilometers away from Kasar Devi lies a very real, tangible, and historically magnificent marvel that doesn't require any debunking whatsoever. This is the Kottamal Sun Temple. Built back in the 9th century by the Katyuri kings, it stands proudly as India's second largest temple dedicated to the sun god, rivaled only by the famous Konark Sun Temple. Tucked away high up in the Kumaon Mountains, surrounded by those deodar forests, it is an absolute masterpiece of early medieval Hindu architecture. And to put that into perspective, the sheer scale of the site is breathtaking. Surrounding the massive main shrine, which is dedicated to the sun deity Praditya, are exactly 44 smaller temples. 44. They're arranged like this complex, beautiful maze of stone, making the entire compound just an awe-inspiring sight to navigate. The engineering of this 9th century marvel is seriously astounding. The ancient masons purposefully designed the entire complex so that the very first rays of the morning sun fall directly onto the main shrine. Visually, it immediately stands out with these distinctive, unpainted, soot-black stone walls. But perhaps the most mind-blowing detail is the ancient masonry itself. To bind these massive stones together so they could withstand over a millennium of harsh mountain weather, they used an adhesive mixture made of lime and, wait for it, lentil paste. Seriously, lentil paste kept this standing for over 1,000 years. Which brings us to a final thought for this explainer. When you look at the reality of this region, a place where a 9th century temple held together by lentil paste catches the very first morning light, and a single quiet ridge naturally attracted everyone from a starving Vivekananda to Bob Dylan and Timothy Leary, you really have to ask yourself, do we actually need misunderstood cosmic myths and Van Allen radiation belts to appreciate this place? I mean, isn't the actual recorded human history of Kasar Devi's undeniable magnetism already magical enough?